This was supposed to be the topic, and I heard many speeches today, and I decided that whatever I'm going to speak might be repetitive. So I'm taking a bit of a turn around and thought cover some matters that will matter to young entrepreneurs and startup from my observation. I was an entrepreneur of sorts from the first day I left law school. And the best way to describe that was learning on the street. Everything I learned in law school didn't apply because in law school they taught you precedent, how to present papers to the court. They don't actually teach you how to argue in court, all the procedures and so forth. The rest is left to you. And can you imagine when I took the opportunity to buy out a law firm, a retiring gentleman who wanted to get out of Singapore, what a challenge it was. Because out of law school, no money, had to strike a deal with him to pay it over 4 years, and the rest was real street play. And that experience continues, even it was 30 years back, it still applies today in many ways. And so today I just want to stand here and share some lessons that I thought might be useful to some of you who are setting up. The first lesson I learned was, you need to know who you are. The issue with being a human is that very often we become autopilots. In other words, when you come up through a school system, to a family system, a community from which you come from, or a country you come from, you acquire a lot of habits, customs, value systems, and so forth. And many of us are very, very, very conditioned. I often like to liken a human being to software and hardware. Your brains are the software. You have lots of input coming from various senses, ears, nose, touch, feel, and it is being recorded in your mind, in your software, and you often keep it there. You do not have control over it. And every time in your life, as years go by, you continue to operate with some software that you picked up when you were just 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, which may not be relevant anymore in the current state that you might be challenged with. So my breakthrough moment came when I actually had I was alone in Singapore. I didn't have a family support system here, and I had what you would call an emotional collapse, asking myself, who am I, what to do, and the answer that came after a lot of struggle was, I have to reinvent myself, because I came from a very protected family who told me what was the right thing to do, what was not the right thing to do, and expectation. When my dad always believed in being a doctor is the greatest and the most noble profession in the world, and when I didn't make it to science course, that was his biggest disappointment in his life. And so the pressure was such pressures exist, parents living for the parents, for their dreams. And finally I realized you are alone in your journey. And with that, I had to go back to the building blocks. I will confess to you, it was sheer depression, right? Went down, broken down, shattered, but had to recompose and rework. And this reworking exercise that I went through applies to me today, and if I share with you, it will apply and resonate with you often in your life. It is still a working principle. And so, if I may say, the first and most important thing to be a successful entrepreneur in this fast-changing technological world with such great velocity of change, with so much intelligence, with so much connectivity, with so much, New York is your neighbor. You throw a ball and somebody takes a camera and a streaming technology, you actually see it happening in your bed. The world is so connected. So therefore, with this complete change of the ecology, your environment, it is important that that software that you have in your head that started recording when you were a conscious being need to be updated. Otherwise, where is the ability to manage new scenarios, new environment, new challenges, new technology, new experiences with old software? So I personally and I'm not saying I've solved it totally, it's an ongoing process. If somebody tell you he's solved all his problem, I will celebrate for him because it's tough, right? You have to continuously challenge and catch up with changes. And your process of being conscious and asking yourself who you are, what you are, is critical. So what I did was I had to go and understand how the mind works, how prejudices work, how I make judgments, how I like and dislike things. Why do I say I like this and I don't like this? When I say things like this is bad and that is good. So you need to get all these, what I will call value systems, sensory perception, sort of put on a balance and understand and be the observer rather than the participant in life. Because if you are an observer, observing things as a third party and watching the scenario rather than emotionally participating with it, you will be better off because you will learn a lot of lessons watching rather than directly participating in a match, in a boxing match. So one of the biggest things I did was to learn to know how the mind actually works and tune it to such a way that you become have less fear, because fear is one of the biggest issues with humanity. Less fear means more capacity to watch, to dream, to see, to feel, to do. So, having started that process once in life, when I was in my early 20s, was not enough, because every few days things change. And then you need to really be updated. And when you update, you become relevant to the situation. And I like to use this word, which I hope will be meaningful to some of you. I call it the on-time, real-time person. The important thing about the world is every day, as the sun rises and the sun sets, somebody is inventing something, somebody is doing something different, somebody is changing the course of history by starting a crisis somewhere in the world. Somebody is, found a new method of doing something. So, to be on-time, real-time person in your living, in your consciousness, is so important. And so I urge entrepreneurs here to always remember that in this new world, when you go into a startup, to remember a few things. That the world has changed since some of the textbooks you have been exposed to has become history. What you need to do is to really be on time, real time, so that your effort in whatever direction you are taking is less wasteful, more rewarding, and more meaningful. Now, what do I mean by all this? It means that when you start a startup, whatever it is, remember a few important things. Your competition is not Singapore. Your arena is not Singapore. Your arena is not Malaysia. Not ASEAN, but the entire world. So your measurement of your abilities, your ideas, and acceptance of certain concepts among your peers, your community, is really not sufficient. It is very important to realize that China is emerging, 1.3 billion people. India, 1.2 billion hungry people. That's it, hungry people. Because today, any villager, any village child with some intelligence have the connectivity to pick up knowledge and to rework things and come out and challenge in a ring with you in creating things. So always, when you want to start a startup, check and see whether such a thing is happening elsewhere. Be honest with yourself. Number two, when you do a startup, you must, from the first point I said earlier about your internal quality, your mind, you need to make sure that you are prepared to continue to be on time, real time. In other words, do not walk around with a script that you carried with you in school, but to be able to continuously rewrite your script about yourself, who you are, what's your ambition, what's your dream, and where you want to go. Because we often carry a script with us and have definition. I'm a Singaporean, I came from NTU, I had this training. I must say that this is what most humans carry along with, and this is seriously limiting, because what you think you are is what you will become. So the ability to continuously to up your ante and to have dreams and see what is happening in the environment. If somebody else in Bolivia or Venezuela is capable of coming up with a great idea, you have the equal ability too, because we generally are born equal. All of us have the spell of magic in us. It only needs to take a spark, an inspiration, an awakening moment. All of you sitting here are potential millionaires, entrepreneurs, and success makers. But we can also be failures if we do not recognize that We are not functioning and walking with time. Time is now. And it's about, remember what I said earlier, it's about your mind. Because life is a journey. Many of us have this thing called memory that look back into failures, disappointments, and carry with it. In almost my experience, I've been behind at least 350 companies in my life. I've seeded 350 companies. And I have seen across the world, from Europe right up to Korea. And I have seen in most cases, people go through emotional drama, right? Saying things like, this partner was not fair to me, this fellow had a better, he stole this idea from me, and how come I have this amount and that amount? And I've seen many people who look back at history of what has happened and weigh that down in their lives. So much so that half of them is gone, half their creativity is gone because fear have come out, conditioning of a past event, and looking forward to see another event of similar nature happening and looking out. There's no time for it. One have to move ahead and look ahead when you are an entrepreneur, because I can almost guarantee you, as a startup, as an entrepreneur, you would have had your politics of problems with past partners and the human emotion is a big way down. So what I'm trying to say here is 2 or 3 big points. Number one, ask yourself whether you are ready and make yourself ready. It is a very essential part of to be an entrepreneur, to be a startup artist, or to be an investor. Are you real time, on time? Are you still a very judgmental person? Are you generous at heart? Because in this new world, almost certainly it's hard to hatch an idea singularly and take it to the world. You require so many interdisciplinary sciences and engineering and marketing and communication to make an idea happen, because it's a huge world, isn't it? 7 billion people. And if you started an idea, a startup, with just Singapore in mind and think you want to capture a education program to just give it to MOE or some kindergartens, or trust me, it's not workable, because the borders are open. The guy in China, the guy in India, the guy in UK will very quickly knock on your doors and take over your market. So you have to examine and see if you have the mental fit, you have the condition, you have the energy, you have the focus, determination, and passion to do it. And often we have difficulty with all that. And so you need a team. And the other observation I often found in startups, we were discussing, there's now the number of startups 3 and 4, and unfortunately, my group is doing 45 at the same time. And we have a system, right? It's a business of incubating, so we have a system to look after them. What I often see at the beginning of every journey is that they think they know everything. The person who thinks I do not know enough and need participants, that means I need, somebody who knows how to communicate, somebody who knows to market, somebody who knows how to structure things, and give them decent participation in the idea, is when success comes in. So there are too many entrepreneurs who have this great idea moment and think, they're already millionaires by having the idea and, they're going to make it all happen. It doesn't happen in this new world. It could have been before, I don't know. But today, you need all sorts of skill to handle this huge 7 billion people, 7 billion size market, because borders are open, everybody is as good as you, because knowledge is flat. Anybody can go and get knowledge. And what is challenging is there is waves of tsunami, right? Of intelligence, hungry people who out of China, out of India, flowing to your shores. Not to be underestimated. Do not look and judge the book by its cover just because they don't speak English well enough or they do not know how to communicate. Doesn't mean that, they are not a threat. So I have often seen young entrepreneurs in Singapore and, they pass judgment like, this guy, he can't even speak, he can't write. These are very surface things. So guys and girls, my message I can share with you today is, number one, you cannot work in isolation. Number two, you have to be mentally, spiritually, and physically be ready to enter this big battle of going into entrepreneurship, especially technology and making innovation in the world. If you are not a warrior and you're just carrying on from your youth without intervention and consciousness, it's difficult unless you are very special. You have to be on time, real time, because the world is totally different. And I almost can bet, if you have an idea, another 100 people have the similar idea, doing it somewhere now. And you have to watch it. Right? Don't get so captivated and jealously hold it, thinking that it is there. And what is worse is if you try to think that you can take it to the world yourself and your idea is, you're going to be a Bill Gates, it's going to be even more challenging because you need, these days, more than 10 good men or women to help you to make it happen. And you need to think beyond your innovation. You have to think about distribution at the time when you start to innovate. You have to think about where you can take this to. What are your challenges? And you know what is even more challenging? The ability to wake up every day and look at what you're doing and see whether it's still relevant. Too many people just go on. They have difficulty facing challenges. It is always better to wake up on time, real time, and look and see whether you need to make a small turn on the left or right. For there are a lot of gaps in the market for you to fill in an unmet need. There are many possibilities. So don't hold tight. So these are some of the little messages I want to share with you because the original speech I had, were all covered by the mentors and the other speakers. And what I will urge you is to go out and create history. Create history and not repeat history. There is where the possibility is. And there's so many possibilities because it's all about convergence these days. Platforms after platform has been created around the place. How do you match one to another to meet an unmet need. Always think of unmet need in a bigger marketplace. Singapore, you cannot survive. That's almost certain. You can't, 5 million people, you cannot survive. So whatever you do, you need scale. So with that, I like to conclude my little sharing. Thank you very much.